right, guys, let's talk about a quiet shift happening in retirement. Kind of between 2013 and 2023, the number of renters over the age of 65 increased by 2.4 million people. Now, before you jump to conclusions, this isn't just a one kind of story. For many, it's deliberate, considering the choice to move away from home ownership. They sold, and after transaction costs, they may have put quite a bit of money into other assets and then signed a lease. And this might sound counterintuitive, especially when we've been told that owning your home outright in retirement is kind of the ultimate goal, according to some people. But here's where the hypothetical math kind of gets interesting. A retiree who sells a home could be looking at a significant amount of capital. That's money that was tied up in, drywall, roof, potentially costing money in taxes and upkeep. And after a sale, that capital could go towards a year of rent in a charming apartment in Lisbon, or, help fund a dream cruise down the Danube, or help a granddaughter with college, or whatever the case may be. A portion of that money might also be invested in a diversified portfolio, which has its own sets of risk and also potential for growth. So if that little scenario just made your ears perk up, then stick around. Because we're going to go explore 5 potential advantages driving this trend. And by the end, you'll have a clearer idea of the factors to consider when deciding if this path kind of makes sense for you. Please remember, this video is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute financial or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified professional before making any kind of major financial decision. So let's hit the numbers and kind of give you an idea of what we're talking about here. So for what feels like forever, the retirement script kind of seemed to be etched in stone. You work hard, you pay off your mortgage, you stayed put in your house, and eventually passed it on to your kids. And for a long time, that was a solid plan. When life expectancy was different, retirement lifestyles were often more settled. But today's retirement can look a lot different. Many people are living well into their 90s. They're often healthier, more active, more adventurous than previous generations. So the idea of being tied to one single address for, 2-3 decades of retirement can feel less like security and more like limitation. It's notable that one of the fastest growing demographics of renters is people 65 and older, and they're looking basically at their golden years and thinking, there might be a different way to live this next chapter. They want to be active participants in their lives and not just kind of passive residents of a property. So let's kind of get down to brass tacks, because this is significant. This is a significant consideration. Imagine kind of selling a medium priced home. So we're talking around $400,000, depending on what area of the country that you live in. After factoring in typical selling cost, which can be substantial, you might walk away with a sum like $300,000. That's not just a number, that can also be potentially life-changing. Now, what if you were to invest the money? For example, a 5% yield on an investment, like certain types of bonds and other things, could generate income. Now, note, all investments, including bonds, obviously carry risk, and returns are obviously not guaranteed. But that income could potentially cover a very significant portion of rent in dozens of wonderfully retirement-friendly cities across the country and even abroad. We're talking places like Tucson, Albuquerque, Pensacola, places like that, Portugal. Very historic, very charming place. But anyways, that house that you left behind, had you stayed in it, might have needed a new HVAC system, air conditioning, heating, roof replacement, ever increasing property taxes, which we're well aware of here in Texas. So when you're renting, the landlord is responsible for those costs. Now, albeit he's typically passing those things through to you in the form of the rents, but in many cases, it can be more cost efficient in terms of renting. And so if nothing else, you don't get all of the financial headaches of keeping up with the property, especially as you're aging. And anyways, it can be a good direction to go for a lot of people. Now, every homeowner knows that the ongoing reality of maintenance That's just something that never goes away if you're going to own a home. So the common rule of thumb suggests budgeting maybe 1% of your home's purchase price every year for upkeep. And so on a $400,000 home, you're looking at $4,000 a year after year after year. And then when you account for inflation, you kind of get the idea of how that can grow over time. That's money for the inevitable, whether it's, leaky faucets, broken water heater, termites, whatever the case may be, or hopefully the prevention of termites. But let's go beyond just the financial aspect. At 70 or even 60, climbing a shaky ladder to clean gutters, for example, is not just a chore, it's a serious risk. Believe me, I don't go up on tall ladders anymore. Spending a Saturday wrestling with your lawnmower might not be how you envision your retirement. Now, I actually like getting outside and staying active and doing yard work and things of that nature. So again, not necessarily applicable for everyone, but it is something that you kind of need to consider. Renters, on the other hand, they've got a different set of responsibilities. If the toilet starts to overflow on a Sunday night, they call the landlord. I'd probably get in there and start trying to fix it myself, but that typically turns out worse. So, but it does come with a warning, because your landlord's not necessarily guaranteed to be responsive. A worst case scenario involves maybe a negligent or slow to act landlord that leaves you with, the chaos and potential discomfort to deal with, but possibly even for an extended period. But in an ideal situation, renting allows you to reclaim your hours, physical effort, mental stress. It's not just about the money. It can also be about, your body, your time, your sanity, so to speak. So, life doesn't stop at retirement. Grandkids might move to Raleigh. Clinical trial could open up in Denver. Or maybe you've always wanted to test drive living in Costa Rica for a year, right? It can look a lot of different ways. And in these scenarios, a lease offers a different kind of flexibility compared to a mortgage. However, it's really crucial to understand the terms, right? So breaking a 12-month lease isn't always as simple as giving 1 month's notice. It can involve, some pretty significant financial penalties. But at the end of the lease term, you can pack your bags and go. This avoids, staging a home for strangers, holding open houses, haggling over offers, or even paying some pretty hefty realtor fees every time you want to move. Now, compare that to selling a house. The process can be draining, both financially and emotionally. It kind of ties you down to a degree. A potential buyer might kind of nitpick everything in your house, whether it's a crack in the wall or the driveway, either one. So renting can offer the ability to adapt, to explore, and to follow your heart and your needs without being necessarily anchored down to a single property. And, provided you plan your moves around your lease terms, right? So that's one thing to keep in mind. Life kind of also has a funny way of changing. As we all know, the only thing constant is change. And what worked for decades might not fit anymore in some cases. A large family home can feel cavernous, especially for a widow or a widower. Those once friendly stairs can become a daily challenge in terms of mobility. So, do you embark on costly and disruptive remodeling projects? For homeowners, that's often a primary option, right? Leads to months of living in a construction zone, right? But for renters, the solution many times can be simpler. You don't have to remodel. You plan your next move. When your lease ends, you can look for a one-story flat suited for aging in place, or a senior complex that already has more accessible features in terms of things that happen to us as we age. The major warning here, I would say, is just the availability and cost, right? The perfect accessible apartment may not be available in your desired location or price range exactly when you may need it, right? So there does have to be a little bit of flexibility in that regard, but still, this path avoids managing contractors, living with dust, and you can choose a place that fits your current needs and not the needs that you had necessarily 20 years ago, let's say. This adaptability can be really a source of peace of mind as well as health and mobility as they become more significant considerations, right? So lastly, I would say here's a statistic to consider. A significant percentage of seniors have a large portion of their net worth tied up in a single asset. And obviously the asset is what we've been talking about, that is their home. For a moment, think about the risks of that concentration, right? A lot of people never think about their home as being a risk. What happens if a major local employer leaves town or the economy suffers, or what if there's an environmental issue that drives down your property values? Maybe the thing to consider is that the value of your home isn't always guaranteed, right? And its decline, if that were to happen, can impact your financial future, depending on what that looks like. So while it's true that real estate is probably one of the better areas over time to invest in, it is kind of location specific, and it's related to timing and the economy and a lot of those things. So, selling your home allows for potential diversification where you don't necessarily have everything tied up in one asset class, which is something that I strongly recommend against. But you could take that capital and, with the guidance of a good advisor, spread it across various asset classes that give you a little bit more balance. That could include bonds for stability, that could include real estate, but in the form of maybe REITs or something along that line for real estate exposure, but without direct ownership, right? Or it could even be a diversified stock portfolio. I mean, there's many different ways. I'm not necessarily giving you financial advice on here's, one product or here's the diversified mix you need to go do. That's going to look a little bit different for everyone, but it's crucial to understand that all of these investments, including real estate, come with their own risks and can lose value. So the principle is really to avoid putting all of your eggs in one basket. And I might add a very stationary basket in the sense of physical real estate, and just make sure that you're spreading out your risk and just gaining a little bit more financial flexibility in your life. So, okay. I know what some of you are thinking. This all sounds interesting, but there are some risks to renting, Chris, right? Well, okay, let's tackle some of those head on. What if rent jumps, right? Rents do go up. We've definitely seen that over the last couple of 3 years or so. That is a major concern. There are areas that have rent control, but others do not, right? And so sharp, unexpected rent increases are a real possibility that can strain income. And it's true that homeowner costs like property taxes and insurance also rise, sometimes dramatically, depending on where you are. But landlords often pass those increased costs on to the tenants in the form of higher rent. An investment portfolio might generate enough income to cover those hikes, but that's never a guarantee. Another big risk is, what if I get evicted? Right? This is a pretty critical risk for renters. If you're a responsible tenant, you tend to pay on time, you're generally secure, right? No fault evictions, however, are a serious concern. This is when a landlord basically decides to sell a property, maybe move in themselves or take a unit off the market and basically forces you to move. For seniors, this can be especially destabilizing, and it's certainly a vulnerability that homeowners don't face in the same way. What about leaving something for your kids, right? That's a big one, pretty important one. A lot of people want to leave something to inherit for their children. Pragmatically, cash can be much simpler to inherit and divide than a physical property. An investment portfolio can often be split with literally a few clicks of a mouse, but splitting a house can involve, realtor commissions, months of showing, disagreements among the heirs. However, a family home can also be cherished. It can be a valuable asset. The alternative is that a diversified portfolio can offer clear, equitable, and a little bit more easily distributable legacy. So, again, kind of depends on the situation and what your goals are in terms of what you leave to your family. So now, if what you're hearing is starting to sound less crazy and maybe a lot more sensible, I'd like you to do me a favor, hit that like button. It helps algorithms show this information to someone else who might be wondering if there's another way. All right, let's be honest. This isn't just about spreadsheets, right? Renting versus owning. It's not just purely about the numbers. There's an emotional aspect to this as well. And that's a big deal. I think people, to some degree, kind of underplay that, right? Minimize it. You think about the porch swing where you watched a lot of sunsets. Maybe the lilac bush you planted when your daughter was born. The kitchen where holidays and meals were shared together as a family. Those things are woven into the fabric of our lives. And so I'm not suggesting that anyone should disregard those memories, but the idea is to carry the essence of those memories with you without the physical burden of the property, if it's become one, right? You could sell the house, rent a smaller place 2 blocks from your grandkids, right? You could still host family dinners, but now you might have the freedom to take a spontaneous trip without worrying about whether a pipe's going to break or who's watering your plants. So it's about separating the home from the house. Home is where your loved ones are. It's where we feel safe. Your house is just a structure, right? It's just a physical location. You can create a new home that suits your current life while still cherishing your past. It's not about abandoning your past. It's about considering really a more liberated future, if that's what fits and works for you. Now, I'll say again, this strategy is not for everyone, although we know a lot of clients that have chosen the path. But it's not for everyone. It's about really making a conscious decision, not following a dogma. So, who might be better off owning their home in retirement? Well, if you genuinely love woodworking in your shop and find joy in mowing the lawn at sunrise, and then keeping your house maybe makes the most sense for your lifestyle. If you enjoy the stability and psychological security of not having a landlord, that is a powerful non-financial reason to own. If property taxes in your area are exceptionally low and your home doesn't require significant maintenance, the financial argument to sell is certainly much weaker. And if your entire support system is within a bike ride distance from your home and you have no desire to ever leave that, then certainly keeping your home can certainly be a valid choice. The point isn't to convert anyone out there into renting. That is not the purpose of this video at all. I just wanted to challenge the assumption that homeownership is the only path. That tends to be thrown out there in terms of a lot of what you hear in financial media. And for some, it absolutely is. But for others, it might be a burden that they really would like to shed and get rid of. So it's about making informed decisions that align with your goals, with your lifestyle, and your financial reality. It's about, as our tagline says, getting clear direction for your retirement, what makes sense for you and your goals. Now, all right, so I'll wrap this up, but just to say again, retirement today isn't just about winding down for many. It's about gearing up for a new adventure. Think of it like a 30-year trip. You could carry all the gear, constantly maintain your campsite, or you could explore options that involve paying a predictable fee for a well-maintained spot that frees you up to simply enjoy the experience. A growing number of retirees are making this swap. They're considering trading the toolbox for a boarding pass and trading chores for new possibilities. So this isn't just a financial decision. It's a profound lifestyle choice. So talk to a trusted fiduciary advisor, run your own numbers, and, truly evaluate what you want your next chapter of life to look like. And if after careful consideration and a lot of number crunching, if the math and the freedom appeal to you, then you can decide if you're ready to start maybe a new chapter that looks a little bit different from the guy next door. All right, so I'll leave you with a question. If you could comment in the area below. If you could cash out your home today, if that made sense for you, where would you consider spending your first rental year? Drop your dream city below, and we'll see you next time, guys. Until then, I'm Chris Wootton, Wootton Financial Group. Let us help you find clear direction for retirement.